This video is going to be on intravascular hemolysis. Intravascular hemolysis is when red blood cells are ruptured within the blood vessels. They lyse and they release their hemoglobin into the plasma, and this is known as free hemoglobin. And then they also leave the membrane of the lysed red blood cells. So it's a membrane devoid of cytoplasm, and we can actually see this on a blood smear, and we call it a ghost cell. Now, this hemoglobin is toxic to cells, so the hemoglobin is naturally scavenged by a protein called haptoglobin. And these haptoglobin-hemoglobin complexes go to the liver, where they're taken up by hepatocytes, and the hemoglobin is converted and broken down into bilirubin. And this bilirubin is excreted and ends up in the feces. So this is what happens when haptoglobin is not overwhelmed, if there's lots of haptoglobin in the blood and is able to scavenge hemoglobin. But if there's severe intravascular hemolysis, then haptoglobin can be overwhelmed. So there's not enough haptoglobin available to scavenge all of the hemoglobin in the plasma. In this case, the plasma can turn red or pink, and that's what we call hemolysis. This hemoglobin doesn't just stay in the blood, it can overflow into the urine, so you can get red urine due to free hemoglobin, which we call hemoglobinuria. But again, this hemoglobin is toxic to cells, so since there's large amounts in the kidney, it can actually injure the kidney and cause renal failure. When this occurs, we call this hemoglobinuric nephrosis. Okay, I'm going to erase some lines so that I can draw some different concepts on this picture. The next thing that I'm going to draw is the hemoglobin being converted to bilirubin. So the hemoglobin does eventually make it to the liver, and the hepatocytes take up the hemoglobin even if it's not bound to haptoglobin. And the liver converts some of that hemoglobin to bilirubin and excreted. But if there's a lot, then it backs up, and it can also cause yellow plasma and tissues called icterus. And it can also overflow into the urine, resulting in bilirubinuria or golden or orange urine. Now, dogs normally have a small amount of bilirubin in their urine, so just because you see bilirubin on a dipstick from a dog urine sample doesn't necessarily mean that there's hemolysis. During times of pathologic hemolysis, there's fewer red blood cells available to deliver oxygen to the tissues, and this results in tissue hypoxia. And then the kidneys increase production of erythropoietin, and then that tells the bone marrow to undergo hyperplasia. So after 2 to 3 days of an onset of a pathologic hemolytic event, you will start to see a reticulocytosis. Okay, so that's it for intravascular hemolysis. Intravascular hemolysis can cause hemolysis or red plasma. It can also cause icterus, and on a blood smear, you're going to look for ghost cells.